Scriptures if I genuinely believed it. I could not do that because that would be a sacrifice of who I am at my core, because I'm a Bible believer at my core. And I personally believe that Vance struggled with that particular thing last night. He stumbled and stammered in that particular part of the debate primarily because I find the right words to be able to say to assure millions of women that they weren't going to rob them of their reproductive rights. This is a problem. This is a problem. So can I say that as believers, we still must retain, and I'm thankful for Christian school teachers, not Christian public school teachers, like not just those that are teaching in Christian schools, but those that are Christians that are still engaging in the public school system. It's a great outreach ministry. It's a great opportunity for them to stand for their principles. It's difficult and it's hard, and they may have to make some decisions based on what they have to teach, but it's important. So here's a few scriptures to consider on this particular thing. We aren't supposed to divorce ourselves of our Christianity. That is, working as individuals within the political system is not contrary to our Christian faith. We believe in the redemption of humanity, a redemption that takes place on an individual basis, not on an institutional basis. So likewise, our political influence comes from the involvement of individuals, not institutions. In fact, any free and democratic society must be based on the strong participation of individual citizens. Every person carries their personal belief system with them into the public arena, along with their biases and opinions. That is, every person, even when you see a Christian and on the other side is a person that says that they're an atheist, they still have a presupposed value system that they brought with them and that they have not left that behind. The only people that are asked to do that are Christians. And we should not have to do that either. That is, we can continue to be believers and believe the Scriptures and declare our faith. It's not forcing it on anybody. And by the way, we do want to affect legislation. We do want to affect legislation morally. We don't want to make anybody worship God, but we certainly want the best moral outcome, don't we? We want the best moral outcome. We're not going to legislate that everybody must believe in the God of the Bible. Everybody must wake up in the morning and declare allegiance to Yahweh. That's not what we're doing, is it? But we are trying to say, hey, listen, we're going to protect life, and we're going to protect people, and we're going to protect this, and we're going to protect that, because that's moral. It's based on Genesis 1. God made every person in His image. And as image bearers, everyone deserves a measure of protection. All right, last, number 6 tonight, let's ask this question. Should Christianity be the official religion of the United States? Baptists believe in the separation of church and state. We believe in that. You say, I thought that's what the liberals believe. No. Baptists believe that. Baptists believe that. We believe in the separation of church and state. You say, in what way? We believe that the state ought to keep its nose out of the church's business. That was the original intent, by the way. The original intent was the government runs itself, but it doesn't. That's why we have the amendments. Government shall make no law concerning the establishment of religion. Right out of the gate, our founders said, let's keep government out of the private worship life of its citizens and their ability to be able to establish worship. Now, there are some hang-ups that come with this. What are the hang-ups? Well, they're free to be able to worship in a way that may be occultic. People are free to worship the devil. People are free to have no faith at all. But we believe in that freedom. Our founders believed in that freedom. But the reason why we believe it so strongly is because we still believe that the gospel of Jesus Christ can overcome all of those things. That if you preach the gospel, an atheist can be saved. If you preach the gospel, a devil worshiper can be saved. That people can be rescued from their sin. And so in regards to this, and then there's a whole bunch of scriptures here about this. Jesus talked about the separation of powers. Mark 12, 13 to 17, he talked about whose inscription was on the coin. And he says, render unto Caesar's the things which are Caesar's, and unto God's the things that are God's. You go on and you read things in Acts 17, 18, 19, all of this about the separation of powers. and religious liberty to be able to make decisions on our own. It's clearly established in the New Testament and clearly a Bible doctrine for believers. We believe that people ought to have the right to worship God based on the dictates of their own conscience and should not be forced in any way and coerced in any way to worship specifically one faith or one religion or another. The mix of religion and government has been a terrible idea for thousands of years. Anytime that the Crusades, anytime that you see any of these types of things that go on, Christians and Muslims have warred over these types of things. When we see Christianity or any Islam or any sort of religion get mixed up with government. So we believe in freedom to be able to worship God as we ought. And this kind of goes along with what I was saying a minute ago. As Christians, we believe in freedom. And so even in the matter of prayer, we have to kind of succumb to the fact that America has become so secularized, has become such of a less of a Christian nation, that we're kind of at the point where we need to allow people to be able to express their prayers and their faith and their worship in any way that they so desire, any way that they so deem fit. And that includes in public areas and different things. Now, I have no problem with Congress continuing to open in a word of prayer. And if guys are asked, they ought to go in and pray in the name of Jesus, because they ought to take their own personal convictions with them when they go into those places. That's different, right? But I'm talking about mandating those kinds of things from a governmental standpoint. We shouldn't be mandating those kinds of things any longer. All right, so that's that. I'm going to open it up for questions. And so come, gentlemen. And does anybody have a question? Mike, go ahead. Wait. Let's get microphones. No, come on up. No. I got two fast gentlemen here. All right. And then I saw somebody over here who was okay, Joan. So we'll go Mike, and then you go to Joan over there, and or else we'll find somebody new. All right, Mike, go ahead.
I don't mean to keep talking every single time we have a Wednesday thing, but
no, you really do.
I can't. Okay.
Because you have a microphone in your hand. So. All right.
Well, you can love what I say, hate what I say, but I'm always going to spin it to positive. I'm always going to spin it to soul winning. I'm going to be a broken record for the rest of my life until I'm dead.
Okay, please do it.
So you read in the Bible always like God's full of truth, but there's also mercy, right? It's always mercy and truth, mercy and truth. He also wants you to be merciful and truthful, right? Mm-hmm. Too truthful, you kind of hurt people. Too merciful, you're too lenient. I think God's giving us a lot of mercy here by showing us that both candidates want to murder children. So it's letting us see that it's actually not politics that does anything, that controls anything. It's us that controls it. It puts power back into our hands, that if we actually go and give the gospel to people, take the fight to the enemy, versus you sit down, you watch Fox News, you get all stirred up. It placates you because you're all like emotional. You have all the Cheeto dust in your cleavage and all that kind of stuff. You're going crazy, right? And it's like that's not doing anything though. Like going out and getting people saved is what actually does something. And now that we have two candidates, and by the way, if you're a man and you can't agree that we shouldn't murder innocent children, you're not a man. I don't care how much real estate you have. I don't care how wealthy you are. If we can't agree that the most innocent life can't be protected, you're not a man. So there's two women running. No offense to women, no offense. But I'm saying there's a woman in a man's clothing up there, and so it's merciful from God that He's saying like, look, you don't have an option here, except that your actual commission is the actual thing that is actually going to help America. So I always got to spin it that way. Sorry.
Okay. Nice day. Thanks. I'm still trying to work past the Cheetos, but I appreciate what you said. With that. And I think it is important for us to be able to recognize that we're coming closer and closer to that lesser of two evils kind of philosophy, that we're moving. And if this is what's happened in the last 4 years, right? If this is the move that we're watching conservatives make in the last 4 years, you can just imagine what it's going to be in the next 4, in the next 8. Just watch what's happening. So I think, and again, we need to remain centered on the gospel. I think that's what Mike's trying to encourage us. Joan.
Okay, this probably isn't going to be what anybody would expect me to say, but I'm going to say it.
Okay.
I can see kind of both sides. I didn't watch the debate. I only watched bits and pieces of it. But I have seen these commercials where these women are presenting this vote on, I forget the amendment, the abortion amendment. And I think, thank you. Yeah, it's
Amendment
4.
4.
3 is marijuana.
4.
So I can see it from a woman's perspective. I believe abortion is wrong in the mindset as it's used as a form of birth control. But I have personally been with somebody who the baby died in the womb. It's not a living baby anymore. It's died. There's no heartbeat. There's nothing going on, okay? She was an inmate at the jail, okay? They gave her 4 days to naturally pass the fetus, and her body, for whatever reasons, wouldn't do it. So I got the short straw, and I ended up going to the hospital with her to have a DNC. I hate to inform anybody here, but a DNC on a woman that still has a fetus inside of her that is dead is basically an abortion. It's just not a live child. The downside, if the woman could not abort or get rid of the fetus on her own, they do the procedure of the DNC. I was in the OR room when this was being done. All the equipment was put around, everything there, because as my role, I cannot leave her unattended at any given time. And they perform it in the same way as you have described in the past as an abortion is done, okay? So I'm kind of I'm on this, like in a situation like that, where a woman has a fetus inside of her that is no longer alive, and she has to go through these procedures. When she hears somebody talk negatively about abortion and she's killing a child, no, she did not kill that child. That child died inside of her. And in order to save her, because if they don't get the fetus out, the fetus will decompose inside of her body. She will have infections and she could die herself. So, and that's what these commercials are kind of leaning toward on this amendment. And I think that we are blindsided by saying abortion kills children. Well, it does kill a child if that woman is using it as a form of birth control. But there are legit women out there that have had miscarriages, that have had fetuses die within them, and their body, for whatever natural reason, cannot get rid of that fetus themselves. And they have to go through the same procedure as that woman that chooses to kill a child. So I think we need to take a stance on it, but I think we need to inform ourselves of what is really going on. Mm-hmm. And, we can take, Mike, I'm sorry, but you said something that really is a little pet peeve of mine, and a lot of people that go out and go soul winning stuff, they use this phrase that it's our job to save. It is not our job. Our job in the gospel, we are commanded to go out and we are commanded to plant seeds and water, but there's only one who gives the increase. And when we say that we saved a soul, we're putting ourselves in place of God, and we're not giving God the honor and the glory for allowing us to be obedient to his word by just planting and watering. And that has been a pet peeve of mine for a few years, because many Christians say it. Oh, I shared the gospel with somebody today and they were saved because of what I did. No, it wasn't. You were obedient to what the Lord has instructed us to do, but it was God that gave you that opportunity. It was you that responded to the Holy Spirit, and you planted or you watered. You may have been the seed planter, or you may have been a waterer, and somebody's been working on that person for years and praying for that person. God made that appointment, that divine appointment for that person to accept his gospel through that presence with you. And I just that's a pet peeve of mine that Christians do, that it's like, no, you're not God. You can't save anybody. You just have to be obedient to the gospel and either seed it or water it and watch what God does. So
Okay.
Those were my two things.
Okay. I'm going to respond. I'm going to respond. First off, I don't know anybody that would identify abortion as the way that a stillborn birth or a death birth. It's not. It's not the same. I know no politician that would see a child that dies in the womb and the extraction of that dead corpse from a mother as abortion. It's just not the same. Abortion, by definition, is the killing of living tissue. So that is, and you should research this on your own and look at the actual bills themselves in relationship to abortion. But I know of no politician that would accept that particular definition. Number two, when we talk about abortion, oftentimes Christians get caught up in the exceptions. Two things about the exceptions. We're not there to abortion yet, but I'll deal with this. There is no exception. There is no exception. Now let's talk about this for a moment. That's a very bold statement, but I'm going to prove it to you. Number one, first off, the amount of the issues where women have been raped or the issues of incest are literally less than half of 1%. The most of the abortions that take place on the basis of convenience. An unwanted child, unwanted pregnancy is going to change their life. It's going to damage their life. This is a straw man that is set up by the other side in order to make it seem like all of these situations exist. Tim Walz took all of the extreme issues last night and he paraded them around about persons being transported between this place and that place and not having access to the health care and all of those kind of stuff. These are by far the most. But let me go back to the statement. There is no exception. Here's what we believe. We believe that the primary health of the mother should always be the priority. So if there is a situation where the mother's health is in jeopardy, you do whatever it takes to save the mother's life. That is not the same as actively choosing to take the life of a child in the womb. That's completely different. So in that sense, there is no exception. We always say, two wrongs don't make a right. But here's the truth. What we say is, in the case of a mother's life being in jeopardy, we save that mother. And if the byproduct of saving that mother is the termination of the life of the child, then that is a consequence we are willing to work with. But that is not something that we chose at the front to eliminate that child on the basis of convenience. That child died in the process of trying to save the mother and save the mother's life. If you get that in your head, you will never have a problem with this issue of abortion.
Right, but my thing is the way that some of what I've read and some of what I've been told, that Amendment 4 states that even in those circumstances, that if that amendment passed, those steps wouldn't be allowed to happen.
Then they need to go back to the table and redraw it. It should still be voted no, with the hopes that they can go back and create opportunity to be able to save the mother's life. Right? We're not gonna broad brush the thing and say it's okay because of what it allows. We have to go back to the drawing board and tell our legislators, no, this in its form is unacceptable. It must be rewritten in order to be able to include some of these particular issues. And so, listen, I don't, like I said, I don't know anybody that would say that when there's a stillbirth or when there is a child that dies in the womb, that is, I know the process has to be the exact same, but that is by definition an abortion. Abortion is the killing of living human tissue that has been made through conception. And then beyond that, the exception rules, we would say, right, let's prioritize the safety and health of the mother. This is why I don't understand. This is so easy. I mean, like, you answer this question this way. We want to prioritize the health and the safety of the mother. And so if a mother is in jeopardy, we prioritize her health. And if in the process of treating the mother, the consequence is that the baby might die in that process, that is a consequence that we will live with in the process of trying to save that human life. We're trying to save life, we're not trying to destroy it. The issue of abortion is the destruction of life, and that's where everybody kind of gets caught up with all this other kind of stuff, right? We're not trying to draw semantics. Stick with your guns, right? Know what you believe on some of these things. I saw Mark back there. Let's go to Mark, Jaden, and then from there Beth Ann, and then beep 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 beep. We'll go until we have to.
I just want to toss out there that if anybody wants to be completely and utterly convinced to not have anything that is for abortion, go and research the Abortion Survivors Network and listen to some of the survivors of abortion. Women, men that have survived being aborted and are going around the country telling people about it.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity in our church in West Virginia to listen to one of these ladies, and you'll change your mind if you have any doubts at all.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to remember what they don't talk about is the trauma that is often experienced by women who have had abortions in later years, the regret that they have, the guilt that they experience as a result of it, and it's real. And we ought to be sensitive to those types of things because they are real. They do happen. But at the same time, we still have to stand for the moral truth and the moral standard. All right, so, from here on out, I want questions. Okay? That means it has to end with a question mark. All right, if you have something that you want to say, okay, say it later, right? Say it to me later. This is for question time. Beth Ann, do you have a question?
I have a question.
Very good.
Okay, so we have what happened last night, okay, in the debate, and about what he evaded,
Yeah.
Vance
Yeah.
Okay. What if he did that to gain votes, but when he is voted in, he will go back on what Trump and all said about the protection of the mother, and because I heard him say that, Trump, the protection of the mother, and, in a place of that type of situation. I mean, what if he just did that because he was put on the spot and he eventually is he knows his values, but he's too afraid to say anything?
It's not the exact same, but let's just portray the fact that I was candidating for this church. And when you interviewed me, I said I believed in the King James Bible, only for the ability to be able to come in and to move you away from the Bible that we've been using. Okay? Was that okay? It's not okay. You say, why is it not okay? Because it's a lie. That's the answer to the question. The ends don't justify the means. The ends don't justify the means. We don't try and get there by subverting our faith and our belief and our conscionable convictions. We just don't. When you do that, you end up pretending to be somebody that you're not. That's what happened last night. Vance pretended to be something. He was uncomfortable in his own skin. Go back and rewatch it. He could not. He was so poised and so able to answer in so many different ways. And when that came up, he tripped all over himself because he couldn't find the right words. Because he was trying to work around the right things to pander. He's pandering to millions of women, right? You got to hold your guns. I'm sorry. I've heard that argument already multiple times, but when they get in, save it. I understand we're not voting for a pastor, but at some point you have to be a person of conviction that holds to your guns and holds to your beliefs, regardless of whether it makes people happy or not. Regardless of whether it makes people happy or not. So I'm just not for that sort of thing. That kind of compromise makes my skin crawl. Somebody else will come up here to Sue and then over here to Rudy, and maybe we'll cut it off there. Sue, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, I just today received my mail-in ballot.
I did too.
Yeah, well, before I fill it out, I want to know what I'm voting for. So my question is, do you have any references? I don't want to be watching Fox News or the other one.
There's a group of pastors, conservative pastors down in St. Pete. Brother Stancil was asked to be a part of that group. Florida Faith Foundations. You can find them on Facebook. You can follow them. They actually provide a voter's guide that will guide you through these issues and their recommendations on that. So Florida Faith Foundations, if you're interested, and we will actually print those guides for you. Because they are all based on moral stands. So, and again, if you want to have a personal conversation, and I know some of you are, Ken was asking me before, he's like, you just don't like Trump, do you? You know? And I'm going to be honest. The rhetoric, the conversation, just watching last night, two men, women, I don't know whether they're men or women now. I'm kind of confused after the whole Cheeto thing. But watching two guys exchange ideas, respect one another and their time, agree on issues and then disagree on issues, push one another and debate substantively. I sat there and went, oh, this is what I've been waiting on. So, and I told Ken that before, that's my issue. My issue is just like all of this, this scary monstrosity that you get, and it really just irritates me. Rudy, we'll end there.
Thank you. You talked about our allies and the respect for our allies, specifically Israel. Watching some of the things that have been recently going on there really does justify our being allies with them. For example, they have the technology to pick missiles off 100 miles in the sky. Yeah. Now, that technology didn't come from anywhere else other than here. So it does give the idea that, these are allies. They are, if not at the top, very close to the top of our list. Question, would you consider the non-meeting of the leader of Israel a snub that would be in, I guess the only thing I could compare it to would be a conference between Churchill, Roosevelt, Stalin, and not showing up for that? Would you look at that snub as the same kind of thing?
Yeah, I think there's several snubs that have gone on. We saw Harris, as a presidential candidate, refused to go to this Catholic prayer meeting. That was a big issue. And then we're watching some of these other. Thank you, gentlemen. We're watching some of these other things take place and transpire. And I think part of the reason why we're seeing some of these snubs is because there's doublespeak going on. There's too much going on one side of the mouth and then out of the other side of the mouth. Yes, we support, and yes, we're behind. And then there's this big push of, you got to end this. You got to end this. You got to stop this. And here's the truth. Iran and most of the countries, Jordan, Egypt, Syria, most of them that surround Israel over there, they want nothing more than the complete eradication of the Jewish people and of the nation of Israel. That's what they want. They're not going to, it hasn't changed. It's not going to change. And I think that's what we need to be aware of. We see the snubs of this leader or that leader and what they're willing to participate in and not. Some of it's political posturing that we're seeing. Other of it is just a warning sign to be able to say, if you're not going to be behind us, if you're not going to support us, and you're going to speak out of both sides of your mouth, why would we continue to have conversation with you? Israel is very capable of defending itself. It's very capable of defending itself. I'm like, get this, guys. This country, the size of the state of New Jersey, that piece of land that everybody wants and they want to divide is the size of the state of New Jersey. And they want to divide it between they want to split it in half and give it to these people. The Palestinians, the Palestinian people are living in all those nations surrounding there. Don't believe all that hype. They've been fighting ever since Isaac and Ishmael. They've been fighting all this time. So this is none of this is new. None of this is new that we see. The liberal news media wants to push you to believe that Israel is this big bully over there and that they're killing all of these civilians. But the truth of the matter is, it's Iran launching missiles. I mean, come on. I mean, how dumb do we have? Americans are so stupid. We are just so stupid. We stand there and we're like, oh, Israel needs to end this, And then they're like, well, okay, we'll eliminate some of the civilian casualties and we'll just blow up their pagers and walkie-talkies. And you're like, and then people are like, oh, some of those people that were carrying pagers and walkie-talkies must have been working for the enemy. And then you start realizing, oh, the civilians. My brother was over in Iraq, and while he was there serving, one of the things that he had to do, he worked with a SEAL team that they were moving material from one part of Iraq to another. And they were actually moving a tank and multiple different things in a caravan. And they were going from one place to another. They had to pass through a couple of cities while they were doing it. And while they were going through the cities, Chris, my middle brother, who's in the Marines, he was telling me that one of the things that was so difficult, which was one of the difficulties of Vietnam at the same time, was that you could not tell who was your friend and who was your enemy. And they said you would go into some of those places and you would kick a soccer ball with a little boy, 11 or 12 years old, who would then walk around the corner and detonate an IED in front of the caravan that you were working in. And he said those things were happening simultaneously. The naivety of war. We've never been in a place ever where we have instant access to information, where we see things immediately. And can I tell you, war is a terrible, terrible thing. Casualties are terrible, terrible thing. But if a sovereign nation is going to defend itself, there will be collateral damage. And sometimes the damage is less collateral than you think, because these people are actually actively, militantly working against those nations in some sort of subterfuge. So I think, to go to your point, Rudy, some of these things, some of it's political posturing, some of the things that we're seeing is troubling, but at the same time, we as Americans, we need to not stop being so naive. You remember back years ago, we had the whole waterboarding thing, I just don't want to know. I'm going to be honest with you. I just don't want to know. What I want you to do is whatever is necessary to protect the interests of this country. Now, I'm not talking about chemical warfare. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm just saying, when you have somebody that has information, you do whatever you need to do, and just don't tell me about it. I don't know what your philosophy is, but that's mine. It's a don't ask, don't tell policy. All right? I don't care to know. So in some of these issues, I feel like the responses are appropriate at sending a message, but some of it's also posturing, at best. All right, we got to close. I got to give you prayer requests. So let's do that. There are prayer sheets. If you don't have one, I can't help you. All right. There are several people on our list. I'm going to go through them quickly so that you can get to prayer. First off, Woody Webster's got cataract procedures coming up the 11th and the 18th. That's been moved for him. Sarah Caldwell is home. Thank you, sir. She's recovering after a kidney infection. So be praying for her. She's been experiencing a lot of pain. Continue to pray for Susanna with her eye. Ginger is also home. She was discharged from the hospital. They believe she has a disease that it's really long, but it's where your body fights itself. It's an autoimmune disease. So they gave her some medication to be able to try and help it. It's helping, but now she's having adverse effects from the medication. So be praying for Ginger. If Fong is here tonight, she went in, had a procedure on her kidneys yesterday, and recovered, got discharged this afternoon, and then she's here at church. So continue to pray for her. Chet's declining health. John Gorsica, who's sick and waiting for lab work. Karen with her surgery on October the 23rd. Continue to pray for John. For Ken and his continuing. The upcoming election, we want to pray for that. Mike's job situation. Others that are on the list, you can see them still going through other aspects of things. Rich Haight is in the hospital. He was not feeling well on Sunday, and Linda told him, let's go to the hospital. No, I don't need to go to the hospital. He was just, ultimately, she was worried about him falling before he got to the car. And she said when he got to the car, she said, I got on the other side to drive. And he said, I made it. Like, that's the goal, right? Like, the goal is just to be able to make it upright out of church. So he's in the hospital getting checked out. He's had some dizziness. He's had some different things. They've run a host of tests, and they're trying to figure out. He's down at Bay Pines, so be praying for him. Yes. Bay Pines. Bay Pines, yep. Be praying for several prayer requests to the Riviere Rd, our missionaries in Mexico. He has been threatened by the cartel. They called him and wanted to become part of their organization by supporting them on a monthly basis, or they threatened to shoot up the church. So this is a real spiritual battle. The first is the attack on Brother Rial's dad, and now this threat from the cartels for our missionaries. And please be praying for his dad. He was released from the hospital this past Friday night. He'll be going through some therapy and healing with family stateside. So be praying for the Villa Reals and what they're going through down in Mexico. Patty Bosley requesting prayer for Bly and the Bly and Kucinich families. Both co-workers, friends' homes were flooded with 4.5 feet of water. They lost everything. So pray for the Bly and Kucinich family. Sharon Jones requesting prayer for David Briggs and family. David is her only brother who's been in hospice care, and his condition has declined. They don't expect him to actually live very much longer, so she's asking you to pray for the family. John Harrow requesting prayer for his Uncle Musa. He got diagnosed with stage 1 leukemia. This is the second cancer that he has, so pray for his health and that he'll get better. But most importantly, pray that he gets saved. So please pray for him. On the inside, on the right-hand side, we added and updated some folks that are in there. The friends and family of Tammy Murray and her homegoing. Cindy Walters, we heard that last night that Cindy Walters had strokes or a stroke, and is hospitalized down at Morton Plant. And so some of you don't know, many of you don't know Cindy, but they were members here many years ago. And so be praying for that. I talked to Chris today, and we want to pray for them. There are also others that are there. Continue to pray for the Picketts with Ruth Ann's passing, for Patty's daughter Julie, who's been affected by the storm and looting. So we want to be praying for that. So we got several that are on the list. On the backside, we have added people who have been affected by the storm. On the very bottom, you'll see folks. We're praying for Debbie's son Brian, Shayna's brother-in-law and sister-in-law, Roland Milam, Zdenek and Michelle, Steve and Michelle, Joyce, all the others that have been impacted in general. I also got a request from Ed the other day, Staff Sergeant Evans, military friend, also impacted by the hurricane. And again, all the people that we've mentioned to you already that are helping. I got my sister-in-law went the other day to take some food to the workers who had been helping with cleanup and doing rescue of people. The workers hadn't eaten, some of them, in 2 and 3 days because of just being out there and working. And so she took some food out to them. They were very thankful. They stopped and they ate. And she had enough food left over to try and minister to the FEMA workers. So she decided to go in and provide it for the FEMA workers. And FEMA had candy and snacks and pizza and food everywhere that wasn't even getting eaten, while the workers were out there without having eaten in a day or two, which is typical government bureaucracy, right? So let's be praying for all those people, and that some of the money that's supposed to get to them gets to them and funnels to them. All right, you got to pray because you got to go. So let's take a moment and pray tonight, and when you're finished, you are dismissed. If we can do something for you, please don't hesitate to let us know. God bless.